This is John Jackson Miller, writer of Star Wars comics and novels, and you're listening to Star Wars with Stevie B. May the Force be with you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome. I have Brian Borg with me here today. He's the president of the Twin Suns Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization whose goal is to promote and inspire reading, writing, basically all across the world at this point. And I'm very excited to talk to you today, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Steve?
Good, good. And you know what's awesome is that this foundation is all promoted with Star Wars.
Yep,
And
that's right.
That's incredible.
Yep. No, it's we'll get into it, of course, but it wouldn't work without Star Wars being a thing at all. And there are myriad reasons why that is, but yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, it's just when I find it's so funny how you come across somebody and then the daisy chain happens and then you find out about a guy and then the guy behind the guy. So I know one of the volunteers that helps out is Dylan. I had him on the channel. Great guy. And then
Dylan's actually our vice president.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned treasurer because, as you guys no doubt saw during that interview, he's very good with numbers.
Yes, I knew that. I'm like, that's the numbers guy for sure. He's the quiet one. He's on the couch. There's something about the couch, But so I wanted to talk to you because I heard that, through Matt Wilkins and then Dylan, the Twin Sons. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I had a little bit of an experience of what you guys must feel when you go to like a school or a children's hospital.
Yep.
Just there's no feeling like that of helping someone.
No, it is definitely a unique feeling. You can't really say you feel great about it because they're in a bad situation when you're going to the children's hospitals. And that's most of the donations I've done. I've been to the children's hospitals. But at the same time, you are seeing smiles on faces that otherwise wouldn't have smiles. So, you're doing something right. And you can't help but feel at least a little good about that.
Well, right. And like my experience with that is my family, we did the trunk or treat last year and we had a Star Wars trunk. I dressed up as Darth Vader. My wife was Mando. The little one was Rey, and we had our trunk decorated. And I could see from a distance this kid was freaking out in the line. So basically, I live in the Twin Cities. So right on the bridge of the states. Okay.
Right.
So when there's one thing in one area, everybody's coming. So I could see this kid freaking out. And he finally gets up to me and he's like, Mom, oh my God, it's Darth Vader. And he beelines it and hugs me. And it just, I'll never forget that. And we had brought with a few Star Wars toys. I'm like, if there's a kid in Star Wars, I gave him a Darth Maul figure and he lost his mind.
Well, that's very similar to the experience we have, and in particular, you mentioned because you were in costume. That's what we like to do. We like to team up with the 501st primarily. We also team up with the Rebel Legion and all that fun stuff. But if we feel like the costumes bring an extra special twist to the memory they get from having this book handed to them, or in your case, it was a toy. I believe Dylan mentioned during his interview with yourself that we did have one donation event at the Phoenix Children's Hospital where somebody else had donated just a bunch of Star Wars figures. And they just had them sitting around. They're like, yeah, we'll just have you hand them out with the books. It was like a Star Wars, I think it was around May 4th. So it was probably their Star Wars event where we had the 501st there. I think we had about 6 or 7 individuals from them. It was Dylan, myself, with a bunch of books just spread out. It was great. Phoenix Children's Hospital has basically a room set aside that is more or less a playroom. They have a bunch of like video game setups, tables, foosball tables, air hockey, that kind of stuff, just set up. And kids are just, doing what kids do. And, you don't normally see that kind of thing in the hospital or children's hospital. And it was a little refreshing to see the smiles, definitely.
Yeah. Different side of the spectrum, as this was more of a fun event. But like you said, the kids, it's terrible and it's unfortunate what they're going through. And if somebody can bring them joy, that's amazing.
Yep. Well, obviously we can't do it without the help of our donors too. So we do what our best to get pictures of the books we're donating and whatnot. But obviously the hospitals are pretty protective of the patients, and they don't let many pictures be taken of patients without their consent, and that usually means a parent has to be there and whatnot. So it's a little tough to convey what it's like inside the event when the donations are actually happening, because we're not allowed to photograph most of that stuff.
Yeah, and I can only imagine like the last few years it was probably a little harder to get involved with everything going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could run you through the timeline if you want, but in particular, obviously, when COVID hit, a lot of stuff changed for Twin Sons. Essentially, just took a year off, more or less, because we couldn't do a lot of what we wanted to do.
Right.
What we had been doing because hospitals were just so shut down, and that was our primary location to donate to was hospitals. We still did, libraries and schools wherever we could, but our big events tend to be fundraisers for hospitals, like our current ongoing one.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's what you're currently doing now is a
Mhm.
hospital fundraising. And by the way, everyone, it's twin-sons.net is the website. You got to check it out. I
Mhm.
mean, donate. I recently sent some books to Dylan. Hopefully
Yeah,
we'll
I saw
see.
those photos of those. That's awesome because we do take. Now we can't donate used books to the hospitals, but we do take those to like libraries, little free libraries, which are basically little, more or less mailboxes in front of people's yards across the nation, across
Yep,
the world,
we got them
actually.
too. Yep.
Yep. And you just drop those. My profession, I'm actually a property manager, and I manage an HOA not too far from where I live, and they have several of those little free libraries in that neighborhood. So whenever I get any books sent to me, it's not that often, but I do fill a couple of those up from time to time.
Plop one in there. Yeah, my wife
Yep.
and I, when we walk our dog, there's some on a little rope that we go, and we always peek in there, and then
Yep.
we bring one, or
Yep.
it's great. That's a great idea. Now
Yeah. No, it's a great idea.
you mentioned that you team up with the 501st and the Rebel Legion. I was going to mention them because they're great. I met some of
Yep.
them. They're great people, and it's amazing
Yeah.
what they do as well. So, like, how did that like? I'm sure they were probably on board.
I'm
As
trying to remember when it originally started, but I think it might have been fairly early on during, that's exactly what it was. It was during Celebration, the first celebration we went to in 2017. That was Celebration Orlando. And I think it was just a conversation we were having because we had set up a booth there. We were invited, we submitted for a fan table, and Lucasfilm invited us. There's a whole backstory there to that whole thing, too. But
yeah,
um, it was just a couple of these guys came by and said, "Oh, this is a really fun idea. We should team up sometime." And I can't remember which detachment they were from. I want to say they were with a garrison out of Pennsylvania, and I think we did eventually hook up with them. It's a little tough for us because we don't like just giving out books to random people to donate. You want to make sure that it's somebody you can actually trust to get the books to the right place, especially since you're dealing with donated money, of course.
right.
But we had at that time Bill was also one of our board members at that time. He took those books over from where he was. I think he's in, I want to say he was in Maryland, and he just drove it over to Pennsylvania for an event there, which was a huge thing for him to do. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Some of our volunteers really do go pretty far out of their way to get these books to where they're going. So it's awesome that they do that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
You
I don't
gotta.
know. I don't think Dylan mentioned it, but there was one event he had where he had to drive. I think it was something like 8 hours or something to get to
Yeah,
this
that's
event.
crazy, but that's when you know that you're a true fan, and
Right.
it's just there's no experience like that. That's a
Yep.
story to tell. We're telling them
It,
right now.
right. And it's almost like he was addicted to doing these donation events for a while because I'm sure it just made him feel awesome. I mean, it does me anytime I do one, of course, but
Mm,
it was like I got to get these to somewhere else other than California. We can't keep going to
Yeah,
California,
we got to get them out somewhere else so people know
right?
about them. Yeah, that's
So
that's
spread
funny.
them out. But yeah, 501st, they always are easy to work with. They have a couple different ways of getting in touch with them to submit. They have like a form that you can fill out on their website that you can say, okay, this is the event we're looking to do. We're looking to team up with you. They'll ask you how many costume volunteers that want to have show. More recently, it's been fewer just because of COVID restrictions are still in place in a lot of these hospitals.
Yeah,
But you still get at least 2 people to show up in costume. And of course, they're the movie quality costumes. So kids just go crazy about that.
yeah. People put some time and effort. I currently just got I finally got a Jedi. I've always wanted to be a Jedi, so now I'm
Okay.
trying to grow my hair out, and I'm trying. My wife's like, "Are you
Get the
kidding
whole
me?"
beard
Yeah,
going.
I'm
And
gonna, do something fun because it's addicting and it feels good to get that reaction from
right.
someone and make someone's day.
So I got to ask you a question because I did
Sure.
see a prior interview. You interviewed Meg as one of your prior interviews, and I think you discussed this costume that you're putting together. Did you ever find the boots for your Jedi costume?
No,
Not yet.
no. I've
Mm.
looked online. There's a couple sites that um I don't the reviews aren't the best, so I don't know, and they're quite pricey, actually.
So years ago, we're talking probably 17 years ago at this point. I was going to San Diego Comic Con, And a friend of mine actually put together a costume for me, and I was just a generic Jedi. And I was looking for the boots at that time, and I ended up going. It wasn't like the movie quality or anything like that, but the closest thing I could find that was actually fairly cheap was a military surplus store that had some boots that I could use.
Oh, that's a good
And
idea.
yeah, so give that a shot if you got any of those around.
Yeah, I asked a few people, and they're like, "Oh, go thrifting," and it's like, "Okay, sure." They're like, "But you got to go in the women's section." I'm like, "Oh, that might turn some heads to see if a guy by himself, looking at women's shoes, So I just was like, I'll pass on that for now,
For now, yeah. So I figured I'd give you at least another idea because that did catch my eye. I'm like, I remember going through that same process a while back.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. But it's just that feeling and that reaction, and that's what makes, like, I talked about this recently, like the Star Wars community in general is pretty embracing. There's nothing like it,
Yeah,
like, and
yeah. There's literally all types of people. All types of people are involved in the community, and you get some bad, but you get primarily good. To be honest with you,
yeah,
it's you see the online vitriol from time to time. We've dealt with a lot of that in our end too, but it's far outweighed by the positive people out there. Far outweighed.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely,
undoubtable. It's so
yeah.
great community, and it's always fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, and what you guys do is great for that. It really truly is. And you mentioned earlier that you deal with Lucasfilms as well. They help out,
Yeah,
like you guys been to Celebration. Well,
correct.
yeah,
So we were recognized as an official fan group in order to get that fan table in 2017. So that comes with a few strings attached. A good example of that is they don't let you do third-party fundraising websites. So like back, when we did the original Billboard before Twin Suns was a thing, that was the Give Us Legends movement.
yep,
We raised those funds through Indiegogo. And we had anticipated continuing to use that same platform for future fundraisers through Twin Suns, but Lucasfilm said that their legal side doesn't like that, and that we kind of had to do it through our own platform. So we had Gordon, our web developer, who remains mostly anonymous on the website. He helped us put together the website and kind of put together the PayPal, all that fun stuff, so that we could take some funds that way directly, first party, and not have any problems on that end. But for the most part, it's been positive.
yeah,
It was interesting times early on in 2017 before we got that fan table approved. I had a couple of conversations with at the time Pete Vilmer, the head of fan relations, and there were a lot of rumors about who Twin Suns Foundation was at the time, because we were brand new. We hadn't really done anything, established anything. Everybody knew that we were, those who knew of us knew that we were coming out of the Give Us Legends
movement. Yep,
right?
yep.
Which itself had all sorts of not so correct
Strings
things going on
attached,
about it,
right?
right? A lot of people saw us as just out there to cause trouble and whatnot. And I remember having a conversation with Pete about that, saying, "Yeah, I don't plan on holding any protests on your show floor. We're just going to be there, celebrating Legends with
Right.
everybody."
Yeah, peacefully. Yeah,
Star Wars, and let them do whatever they want to do. And hey, we're just going to be collecting books too while we're there. And kind of one of the things that we decided to do for both the celebrations we've been to is kind of collect the books from anybody who's there. I think Dylan went over this a little bit, and then we like to donate the books somewhere in the area to a children's hospital in the area, just kind of as a thank you for hosting, as a host city hosting celebration,
great idea.
that kind of thing. So, and we actually did have quite a few books donated to us, both in Orlando and even more in Chicago, because people knew we were going to be there. So it's a little sad we couldn't make it to London this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, there's always, the next one.
That's
What
right.
I'm saying? I mean, London, that's quite of a journey for, what I'm saying? Everything you do, that you guys, all your volunteers, you do that on your own free will,
No, we do say that, but we do have somebody on our team who develops, designed our logo, for example, designed the billboards themselves. He's actually based out of England. So I could, ask him, hey, could you just drop a word for people there for Twin Suns? But we wouldn't be able to have a full booth there. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. So what's the experience like the first year that you went? Like, how was that?
So that was the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you my personal experience too, but I also want to mention one of the things we did at both celebrations is we actually had a live stream going the whole time that we were there. From our booth, you could see the show floor, everything that was going on.
Yep.
And we tried to have somebody interacting with people who were asking questions or whatever, watching the stream. So I've been to a lot of conventions in the past, mostly, comic conventions like San Diego Comic Con or the Phoenix Comic Con, because I'm obviously based out of Arizona, so that's my local convention. And it was interesting being on the other side of the table for one of those, because I'm used to being the person that's walking around, going to panels, seeing the show floor, buying
Meeting
whatever's
people.
out there. Right. And, going to people instead of being the person behind the table where people are coming to you. That's a very different thing. And, one of the things that immediately I remember is just, the kind that you see just people, right? You're just seeing random people, whatever. And, oh, hey, that's an author who just walked up to say hi.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? I didn't recognize this person. I think Dylan mentioned a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
I do remember we were setting up before the show floor was open one time. I think that was in Celebration Orlando. It's like our first or second day. And Steve Sansweet walked up and was just grabbing random stuff from our table. That was kind of random. Dylan was a little awestruck. I think he was trying to recover from previously not recognizing who he was.
I heard that story. Yeah. It's like, I didn't realize that was him.
Right. Yeah. But he knew who it was right away. And,
Yeah.
I was too busy setting up things. I didn't even look twice until he said, "Oh, it's Steve Sansweet." I'm like, "Oh, Steve, hi."
Pleasure.
So, yeah. So, it's an interesting experience to be on the other side of the table. But most importantly, it's really fun because you meet a lot of people in person that you talk to like online. At that time, most of us had only met online. We haven't really done anything in person. Bill and I had obviously met before when we went to go see the Billboard over in San Francisco, which in of itself was an experience. But it was fun because you see a lot of YouTube personalities that you just like, oh, this person's a very real person. Like we met Chris Nelson there for the first time. That was fun.
Yeah.
He liked to hang around our booth quite a bit. And I was so busy doing everything else with the booth, I didn't get to talk with him as much as I would have liked to. But he did come back for us in Celebration Chicago as well. So
while we're talking about this, should we put the picture up about
sure,
of the war chest here?
Yeah. So this was our group. I had this picture taken in a Red Robin. This was, I think, day 2 or 3 of the convention. You see a few people there, mostly the people who helped out at our booth. And what this was is leading up to this point, we were kind of one of the head groups of trying to determine, all right, gather all the Legends fans. Hasbro's releasing a fan poll for what new character they want to put a figure together for. And then we said, okay, previous years we had gotten together and we held some votes within our Facebook groups and whatever, and said, okay, whichever one wins the most votes out of all of our groups, that's the one we're going to put our support behind. First one was Revan. Later came Jaina, and I think it was the same day they revealed the Jaina figure at this convention that they announced, oh, hey, by the way, we're doing another fan poll. And we had to scramble because we weren't expecting it for another few months. And everybody who was the head of this thing was at the convention, so nobody would have been there to organize anything. So we're like, wait a minute,
there's an
opportunity here.
Yeah,
everybody's here. We could just talk it fast all together and do it really fast. So yeah, we got together. We discussed various characters that we had seen in prior polls, new characters that we hadn't seen in polls. Working within the rules that Hasbro had for their poll. And, it was things like characters couldn't have a figure done previously. So it had to have been somebody, relatively new-ish, or hadn't had a figure before. And we're like, okay, well, a lot of the Legends figures or expanded universe characters, however you prefer to say it, they've had many figures released in the past, but not everyone. And so the next tricky thing became, okay, well, how do we, pick a character that for the most part's been on paper and never had a physical portrayal of any type or a picture portrayed somewhere and get them to have a figure? Well, that's a challenge, but I still think we should rally behind. I think at that time we decided to go rally behind Ben Skywalker. So Luke's son.
Yep.
And that was an interesting pick. There were other names thrown around there. I'm trying to remember everybody else that was discussed. But it was fun. And then we just, all got on our phones and started sending out polls to all of our various groups. And, it was a good time. More than anything else, it was a good time just kind of talking. It was a different way to talk Star Wars with people.
Yeah.
And, all these guys were very, very, very fun to be around. Obviously, you got Chris in the front left. You got Travis front right. You got Dennis. You have Lynn. You have Bill in the back left there. And obviously Dylan in the back right.
Yep.
It's a great time. Great time.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I just when you were talking about introducing them people, I just wanted to get because that's a cool story, and then
Right.
people can see who you're talking
And
about.
before that convention, I hadn't met all but two of those people in person.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and then to see you guys all there having fun and a good time, I can just
Yep.
imagine what that experience and what you were doing, and they did
Right.
end up making the figure, a
Yep.
figure from the Legends.
That's right. And I know another person you interviewed was Evan, and Evan's one of those people we met in person for the first time while we were at the convention too. And it's just you see all sorts of people. Before the show floor opened up, you saw Dave Filoni walking around, which was fun. It was like, oh, I
Yeah,
didn't bother him because he looked busy, but I was like, oh yeah, I recognize it. I recognize that hat.
yeah. You want to, but you shouldn't,
Right.
because
He's
it's Dave
busy, right?
Filoni or another. Yeah,
And to be fair, I was pretty busy at the time too, so I didn't want to put us behind.
s-
But it was good. It was a lot of fun. A lot of
yeah.
fun.
That's and that was at Chicago, correct?
This particular one was at Orlando, actually. That
Oh,
was the very
Orlando.
first celebration.
Okay,
So
all right.
a red robin that wasn't too far away from the convention center. It was hilarious. I
That's cool. That's
think we
cool.
ended up there like 3 or 4 times.
So we got some of the story so far about the twin sons, but now I want to talk about Brian Borg and
Uh,
yeah, how you became so indulged in Star Wars, which ultimately led you to doing this.
Gotcha. So I think my journey is a little bit different from most of the people you've talked to so far. And I think that's something you're going to find as you talk to more and more people. Everybody has such a different point of entry. Now, as with most people, my point of entry is the movies, of course. The earliest memory I have of watching Star Wars was actually with my dad. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And the scene that stuck to my mind was at the time was Return of the Jedi, and it was when the Emperor was shooting lightning at Luke. And that is my earliest memory of Star Wars. Is that's the one thing that I remember from the first time I watched it, and it
Uh,
just stuck there.
it must have just, but was it just, it has to be the lightning and everything. Yeah, it's a
It's
pretty
just
dark scene.
right. It's a dark scene. It's a powerful scene,
Yes.
and you see Luke trying to get his father to help him out. And of course, I'm watching that with my own father, so there's a little bit of a connection there too. But it's the one thing that got me into Star Wars. From then on, everything I wanted to do involved Star Wars. Just growing up, all the Star Wars toys that I had. I had Legos, but there weren't any Star Wars official Lego sets at that time. I was building the X-wings before the kits actually existed.
That's true. Yeah, that
So
had to
I
be
was
a
making my
challenge.
own Star Wars Legos,
Yeah.
and to varying success.
Well, you did what you could to make it look like it. That's for sure.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So it was the movies for a while. And then eventually, I think it was around 11 or 12, I was at my cousin's house and I saw him playing the original no, it was not the original Dark Forces, it was Dark Forces 2. And I didn't realize there was such a thing as a Star Wars video game.
Yeah.
And so he kind of hooked me into Star Wars video games at the time. So I went from the movies, the original trilogy, to the games. And then around that same time, the prequels started releasing. And so I was into the movies. I remember watching. It was actually a big family event, the state father-son golf tournament for Arizona. My dad and I went, and that was around the same time Phantom Menace released. And it was my grandfather, my uncle, my cousin, my dad, and I. We all went to go see the Phantom Menace together,
Oh,
and
cool.
that was a lot of fun. Then going on from there, uh, more video games primarily until it was probably about 13 or 14. My mother had started taking pretty much all the neighborhood kids to a library every Friday, and I hated reading. Absolutely hated it. Absolutely the worst thing in the world to me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Until I found a certain book in a novel section that I was told I had to go look through by my mother. I hated books, so all I would go to would gravitate towards things like the visual, dictionaries, all that fun stuff. And the book I found was Michael Stackpole's Bacta War, the actual 4th book of the Rogue Squadron series. And that is my first book that I read, actually. I just jumped right in the middle of it, loved it so much. I immediately started looking for everything Star Wars book related, not knowing that those existed before that point. And it was good.
That's crazy. That's crazy
Yeah.
to think. You just picked, like, it just sparked. It's that. So, would you say that that's like your favorite book? I know it sounds that's difficult to say.
Not my favorite, but it is up there. My favorite book is also by Stackpole, though. And that one's I, Jedi. I actually do have a couple of books on my desk here that I was going to show here. Stackpole is also an Arizona native. So he does go to the comic convention from time to time. And, I had a couple of the books signed by him. So, of course, I picked up a copy of the Bacta War.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
the first book I had him sign was the first book I read, of course. And so I had him sign it.
Awesome.
That was fun. But my favorite book is I, Jedi.
Really?
Yeah, so I have the hardcover version of that because it's my favorite book. I had to get the hardcover.
Yeah. Beautiful
And
looking.
I also had him sign this one. This is actually just after we had started doing all the Twin Sons stuff and all that fun stuff. And I'm just looking for his signature on the first page here.
Have you guys tried to reach out while you were looking? Have you guys tried to reach out to authors to come and like maybe help out in an event or?
We've talked to a couple of them about similar things like that, but we've never really tried to bother them for our donation events per se. It's something we've considered for other things though. Like we have a YouTube channel that goes underutilized. A lot of the stuff for Twin Sons goes underutilized, mostly because we're just a small group of people and we're all very busy people.
Right. Lives.
But we would love to, do kind of something like what you did where you bring in an author, just discuss whatever they wrote, whatever it might have been. Could have been a comic, could have been a book. Heck, they could have been involved in the video games. It would have been fun. Just bring them on and interview them.
I just wanted to ask you that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I got him to sign that.
That's nice.
And then I'm just going to show this real fast because we're on it. Sure. So the Bacta War, I don't know if everybody realizes, this is actually dedicated to Dennis Lawson. So he's the actor who portrayed Wedge Antilles. And in Celebration Chicago, Dennis Lawson actually came over from Europe for the first time and was doing autographs. So I brought my copy that I had signed by Stackpole, and I said, "Hey, this book's dedicated to you. Can you sign it?"
Really?
So
cool.
Same book. I have both the author and the dedicated person signed it. I was like, that's probably one of my favorite possessions. Just because
that's a rare gift right there.
Right.
Like, you don't get that every day.
And Dennis didn't know he had a book dedicated to him. So that was another thing too.
Yeah.
So.
It's a mind blower. I mean, there's nothing like a feeling of being there. I mean, you could buy something offline from somebody signed, but it's not, like that's an experience.
No, it's different. I mean, obviously it's a big line to get to the person and you're trying not to take too much of your time because there's a line of people behind you that needs the signatures too.
Right.
But I was ready to go and he wanted to keep talking. So I thought that was kind of fun.
That's cool. Yeah, for sure. That's a memory, man. That's a memory. Making memories with Star Wars is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So you were 6, your dad showed, out of the original trilogy, I feel we grew up around the same time era, in the middle of things, right? I'm OT as well. So what's your favorite one out of the 3?
So obviously my first memory being 6, it's actually 6. I loved Return of the Jedi the most, more than any of the other ones, including the prequels. But after that, I probably go with episode 3, believe it or not.
Really?
Revenge of the Sith. And I think the biggest reason for that is because I love space battles. And both of those portrayed space battles very well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agreed. Yeah, a lot of people say the Obi-Wan, and Anakin fight, which is epic. And obviously it's the story, but it does have phenomenal, battle scenes.
Right.
I like the Phantom Menace. That's my
Phantom Menace.
Yeah, that's my prequel.
Is a great movie.
Like you were at that age when you went and saw it in the theaters. I mean, you remember that hype all around that movie. It was insane.
All the stuff that was coming around. I know Meg mentioned the Pepsi cans. I remember collecting the Pepsi cans at the time with all the characters on them, trying to look for this character or that character. It was a great time. Yep. Great time. Back when the marketing wasn't as overflowing as it is these days with how they're doing things now, but it was still fun to try and find these things.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's people that still have them cans too.
Yeah,
never.
I unfortunately don't. They got crushed when we tried to move, but they were so fun to find though.
So Revenge of the Sith. What about like the sequels? How do you feel about the Disney? Now, hold on. Let me rephrase this. Like you guys were a part of creating a Legends. We Want More Legends billboard, which we can get into.
Right.
So I want to know how you feel about the split.
So personally, I try to stay very neutral on this because I won't lie. Back in 2014 and probably into early 2015, I was a very angry fan, very not happy with what was decided and the direction they decided to go with. I was very excited when Disney bought it in 2012, thinking, hey, the books that I've been reading for the last 15 years, they might get turned into something that everybody else can enjoy, and they can understand why I've been enjoying it so much.
Right.
And it felt like a good way to share that with more people. But when they decided to go a different direction, I was pretty upset, like a lot of fans were at the time. But I remember having a conversation with my dad and actually it was my whole family was there. It was a birthday dinner. And we had this discussion about how they couldn't buy me anything Star Wars related because they were afraid it would take me off. And they're still very careful about that to this day. But it was a conversation with my dad. He said, you're not going to get anything to change if you keep being negative about things. You got to change this into something positive. And so I like to think that was one of the seeds that started the direction we ended up going, which was being a much more positive organization, more inclusive as far as fans for any type of Star Wars. Because all type of Star Wars is Star Wars, right? Like you're a fan of the new stuff, you're a fan of the old stuff, you're still a fan.
That's
And it's not on any individual fan to say, oh yeah, you can't like that stuff, or you can't, you have to like this. No, that's not right. And that's when Twin Suns, we named it Twin Suns because we thought the idea of two parallel timelines, Twin Suns being out there, one for the new canon and one for the Legends Expanded Universe old canon. And that was the idea behind Twin Suns that kind of drove the name forward. That was our ideal. We wanted you to be, happy regardless of what kind of fan you were. And we wanted to support that effort. Now, a lot of our efforts do focus on Legends, but that's mostly because there's not much out there supporting Legends right now while the new stuff's coming out. So we're more focused on that. But we have donated new canon books. Whenever they're donated to us, we'll happily donate them along. It all feeds into our goal.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, that's the getting reading and writing out there and helping children and communities. And I'm glad that you rolled into the name thing. Yeah.
Right. So, but as far as my feelings towards the sequels and all the new stuff they've done, I've actually been keeping myself away from it just because I didn't feel like my opinion on the matter is going to be any better for it until, something's continued with the Legends side of things, or at least wrapped up with the Legends side of things.
Yeah.
And then I'll be happy to give it a shot. I'm in plenty of what I consider neutral Star Wars groups because they'll cover all Star Wars. And I see plenty of what's going on, and I get a lot of the feedback from all sides of the discussion,
the spectrum.
Right. So I do know a lot of what's going on, but I still haven't seen like any of the new movies, or the shows, or read any of the books or comics. And it's kind of sad when I think about that because I used to be the guy running to the bookstore whenever a book is released. But that could be me again in 10 years. You never know.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, from you not wanting to read to diving into, the Bacta War and opening up everything that, all that expanded, it's just crazy. So then I came into this later, like I've always been a fan on and off, but, I didn't read much of the books back then. I didn't know about the whole side of things. So when I got back into the fandom and it's like, wow, all these books don't really, they're not going with them. They're doing their own thing. I could just imagine what that feels like.
It was a gut punch. And I remember one of the criticisms we had after the initial Billboard was people thinking that we were wanting to end the new stuff in favor of going back to the old stuff. And we're like, why would we want that? That's literally what happened to us. We would have to happen to you. We don't want that. We know what that feels like. That's just not right. And so, it was a gut punch. Star Wars was a significant portion of my life outside of work at that point in time when that happened. So it was kind of like I have to rediscover more or less other things, get into other things. Otherwise, I'll be in a very dark place.
Yeah. Well, right. You're a passionate person. Like from the little bit that I've seen, you've been out and about, and like you said, your channel, you guys have lives. You're all busy individuals, and this is volunteer work. Yeah. So I understand. So turning back the time, like you said, that beautiful moment, when you picked that book up and read it.
Yep.
What happened? Like, where did you?
So from then on, it became a realization for myself that there was a whole nother realm of Star Wars that I didn't know about, and that I needed to dive into this as quickly as possible. So back then, I wasn't on the internet at all. I didn't know too many hardcore fans. I knew like one or two that were in my immediate circle or whatever. But I was by far the hardest core of the hardcore, which is hilarious for me to say now because I talk to people who are far more hardcore than myself at this point.
There are, for sure.
Like you talk to Jeremy, you hopefully eventually talk to Chris and Matt, but those guys are just another level beyond what I am. Like, read every book. Even I haven't read every book.
I know.
I've read every comic. I haven't read every comic. Matter of fact, I barely touched the comics.
And they own them all, and they're pristine, and
right. Multiple copies, this edition, that edition, this rare release from Europe in this one magazine, obscure or whatever.
It's an article from Switzerland.
That's right. I'm like, how do you know about these things, let alone have these things?
Yeah. Yes, them guys, they got a lot. And
right. So no, it was mostly going through the library stacks, finding whatever books I could, and then trying to plop in the holes wherever I could. In the middle of that process, this was probably junior high for me at that point. So 14 or so. Another one of my friends had said that, because I had lent them out a book and they liked it a lot. I can't remember what book it was, but it was a Star Wars book. And they said, "Hey, I just found this new book. It's called Vector Prime. You should really give it a shot." And so this was the beginning of the new Jedi Order. And he got me that book. I started reading that, and I was one of the lucky fans that got to read those books as they were releasing, which was an experience of themselves. Like, you were on the edge of your seat. Every visit to the bookstore was, "Is it out yet? Is it out yet?"
I can just imagine, I can just imagine, especially that series, because everybody talks about it and how fantastic it is.
That series was a major focus of mine. All the way, like I said, from the tail end of junior high, and they finished releasing it in my senior year of high school. So it took me basically through the end of my primary school, school life. That was what I was reading. And in junior high, which reminds me of a story I had I took like art classes and all sorts of stuff in junior high. I just took whatever sounded like fun. And my art teacher at the time was so tired of me doing Star Wars focus pieces. Wow. He would just look at a piece and then look up at me and go, "Mr. Borg,
can we get something different?"
Right,
please?
Exactly. And yet he gave me A's on all of them. So I was like, well, why would I do anything different? It's what I wanted to do. Yeah. And you're giving me the grade I want. So
I remember used to draw Dragon Ball Z characters, and I was terrible at it, but I remember that.
Dragon Ball Z was another big thing.
Yep. Another big fandom.
But it was good times. I was still playing a lot of the video games, which kind of gets me into one of the things Star Wars did do for me, kind of offshoot. But I purchased a game called Force Commander for computer.
Okay.
And my computer turned out was incapable of playing this because it didn't have a right component. And being who I am, I don't like taking no for an answer if I know I can find a way to make it work. So I learned how to upgrade my computer just to play this game.
That's impressive, though.
Which led into me taking computer repair classes in high school, and now I'm able to build my own computers, which is a lot of fun. But it's a skill I picked up exclusively because of Star Wars.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And it's part of you. You could build a computer for someone, or you're technically inclined. Yeah,
right.
And that's a good way to be, especially in the era that we're living now, because, I grew up, like, computers started becoming a thing. You took computer class in school. And
right. I remember that was another one of those things my mother pushed me into. It was just like, you got to take this typing class. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't want to take a typing class.
Right. Yeah. I didn't like
That's a good thing I took a typing class.
Yeah, because it's what we do mostly
That's
daily,
right.
people.
It's
how we communicate.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, it was a lot of books, a lot of games, all the way into pretty much around when we got this whole, decision by Disney. It was all that fun stuff. I think I only had really one negative experience at that point. And that was, I did not enjoy seeing the original Clone Wars movie, the one by Dave Filoni, inside theaters. I had taken a bunch of friends being like, Star Wars is back at theaters. Being all excited about it, and we came out very disappointed because it was definitely meant for a crowd that wasn't us. It was meant for a younger age. Going back, I've watched it again since then. I'm not as hard on it anymore. It's it's Star Wars, but it's not intended for the age group that we were at that point.
It's different.
I will say there was one other thing I did do. I mean, obviously I saw the episode 2 in theaters with my friends, but we actually went to the midnight release of episode 3. And I remember sitting in line with one of my friends at the time. for about 13 hours to get into that movie at midnight.
Well,
We had
that's
the
what we
tickets.
did. Yeah.
Right. We had the tickets, but that in of itself was an experience because there was a bunch of Star Wars fans out there. And they actually introduced me at the time to Star Wars miniatures game. So we were just, playing games, all sorts of tabletop stuff outside. My other friends eventually joined us. It was just it was basically a Star Wars party right before the thing started.
Man, yeah, them experiences and them times back with your friends, it just brings you back to that good place, and
Right.
it's just all around Star Wars. That's my goal here. That's why I love talking to people and hearing their stories and sharing them, because you just hear, and it brings me back too. Not necessarily to. I mean, I remember sitting around playing GoldenEye and
Yep.
Gauntlet Legends, and
Yep.
and then Final Fantasy VII came out, and the PlayStation 1 and Twisted Metal. Just but I remember going to the Phantom Menace, and that'll always be with me, and I'm grateful for that.
Yep. I'm sure it was quite the experience. Did you? I don't think I've heard yet. Who did you go with?
I went with two of my buddies, Matt, and then Jason.
Okay.
And,
So a
but
couple of friends of yours. The
yeah,
three of you went.
yeah, and we don't really talk. Yeah, I mean, through school, after school, you know what I'm saying? Like lives happen. Well,
people move away.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay in touch. Yeah, I get you. It's natural thing that happens over time, but it's still a memory you have regardless.
Yeah. And then one of my really good friends that got me into Star Wars, he moved away. His name was Drew, and I believe he went to Iowa. And back then computers wasn't a thing. We still had the phones, cord phones. Cell phones weren't. So we just lost touch, and I never talked to him. But I used to go to his house, or he'd come to mine, and we'd play with. That's why I like the Power of the Force figures.
Right.
We played.
I see a bunch of those back there.
Yeah, we used to watch the movies and play with them, and so it's like that brings me back to that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Can't take that.
Good times, right? And it's just they're good memories. It's not just that it's Star Wars; it's the memories you had around it. Being Star Wars, and the friends were there with you, the things you did, and that is a big part of Star Wars. And that's why I think my dad was ultimately right. I was way too focused on the negative in 2014, early 2015, and so that's why we had to turn it to something positive.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like putting up the billboard.
Okay.
Like essentially that was the 20. That
was an interesting process.
Yeah. So how did that go? Because like you don't just I'm going to put up a billboard today,
No, you don't. So as we're talking about this, I think I had a photo of the original one. Let me see if I can find it. I don't remember if I have it in here or not. But basically what it was, there it is. So basically what it was is at the time, I think Dylan mentioned it, there were a bunch of Facebook groups. Facebook was the place to be if you were a Star Wars Expanded Universe fan. Just wanted to talk Expanded Universe, wanted to vent what had happened, all that fun stuff. Just talk, organize things to get together to say, hey, we still want new legends, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
And at that time, I was just, another person in the membership, wasn't running any groups, wasn't doing anything. And I just happened to see somebody talking about this idea where they said, hey, we should put up a billboard. And I looked through the discussion just looking, okay, does anybody actually want to try to do this? Because that sounds like a great idea to me. Like, it's worked for other campaigns. I think Dylan mentioned Crystal Pepsi being one of them.
Yeah.
And, it kind of evolved into this thing where a bunch of people started talking about it in that thread. And then we kind of all grouped up in another subgroup and said, okay, let's work together on trying to figure out how to make this work. And my background is I have a little bit of real estate knowledge. So I knew roughly what I would need to do in order to find a location and who would be able to get us, up on a billboard theoretically, who could at least get us pricing to figure out, what our goal would be. How realistic is this?
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, well, I have the knowledge to do that. And I feel like I'd be failing everybody if I didn't try to follow through on that knowledge and give them this information and see what we could do with it. And so I reached out as the billboard and the picture shows, this was the original one. It's by Clear Channel that owned that space. And so I reached out to them and they gave me pricing for multiple locations around San Francisco because we knew if we were going to do one, we wanted to talk directly to the people who were running Star Wars, right there at their headquarters.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what locations are close to that? What would they see on the way to work that would say, hey, the fans are out here. They're willing to put up a billboard that said, please continue the original stuff. And so, the group got together and it turned out there were all sorts of skills and individuals in that group. Like different skill sets. One of them being Paul, the individual I mentioned earlier from Europe. He's the one who has a design background in advertising, this kind of thing. And he was able to put this together for us. We had, other people chiming in on all sorts of the language. We had discussions about what it should say. How do we say what we wanted to say in a billboard space, yet still make the font large enough to understand? And it was a process that probably took 2 or 3 months before we're like, okay, well, we've done everything except for trying to collect the money. Are we actually going through with this?
Yeah, and it's just incredible.
And so we launched the Indiegogo campaign. For whatever reason, they put me in charge of running this thing, which still I don't understand why to this day. But hey, they did. They put me in charge of it, and I had a team of people helping me out, trying to get me to this finish line. And obviously, a lot of people were very interested in making this happen. And it eventually got to the point where we're like, okay, we're almost funded. This is going to happen, isn't it? And it did. So that was, I believe, in April of 2015. I want to say, was it 2015 or 2016? 2016. No, I take that. It's 2015. And so, as I mentioned earlier, and as Dylan mentioned in his interview, Bill and I ended up meeting up on the day or around the same time frame that it was supposed to go up. Bill had gotten there early. And he was trying to catch them actually putting it up, but they had done it overnight while he was sleeping. He was very upset about that. But we did eventually meet up. We got to do, take a look at it, took pictures, kind of stare at in awe of what we had done and helped all the fans do. And then we took a walk, just down the street to Lucasfilm just to see how far it was.
Yeah, it's a story to be told because not every fan just goes out and does this for the fandom. And,
it really was, it was a group effort though. Like not any one person could have done this. I had the knowledge for, finding a location and how to get the information on pricing and the communication there, but like I couldn't have designed it. I wouldn't have been able to put this all together, all by myself. I certainly could have funded it by myself.
Right.
So it was everybody coming together to make it happen.
Yeah, the camaraderie that in the team, and it's just the passion that you have for that, and it's cool. And it wasn't that far from Lucasfilm, correct?
Mm-mm. It was within a mile. I think the actual walk took us like 7 minutes from the Billboard to Lucasfilm's campus, and it was the right direction for traffic, all that fun stuff. High enough up that it wouldn't have been blocked by taller traffic. We considered all of these things. We had a map of the locations for all the billboards, figured, okay, this is the direction it's facing. This is where all this stuff is coming from. This is where they're likely driving by, all that fun stuff. So, the downside of a billboard is it's a static location. So you have to make sure it's in the right place and that it's, as visible as it possibly can be. And, we did that. We put it all together. It got some news coverage, which surprised all of us.
Yeah.
But and it wasn't all positive, which is unfortunate. The wording as such as it was didn't really convey everything we wanted to say, but it's hard to do that.
You're limited. Yeah. And it's talked about, it's known, and that's impressive that you guys did this, and even the negativity stuff.
It happens with everything though. So at the time it felt really terrible, but looking back on it now, it's like there's far more positive that happened out of that than negative.
Oh, for sure. And there's still positive things happening.
And we had employees from Lucasfilm, posting about it, and they were seeing it. And you remember one of the bits of feedback from the time was from the new to Star Wars author Chuck Wendig was one of the ones who responded to it and said, "Hey, this is a really cool idea." And he suggested that we probably should have put the funds towards doing some sort of a charitable thing though instead. And I was like, he's kind of right. We did end up doing that with the excess funds that we generated. That was our plan all along, to buy books and, send them to a library. But we're like, there's actually grounds for this in the future. Maybe we should look into making that an ongoing thing, and it kind of ties into everything else that had led me up to where I was at and where everybody else was at that time. And we're just like, how hard is it to put together a nonprofit? Could we do that? And, nature of my job, I just know a lot of people. And I happen to know somebody who's good on the tax side of things. And I said, okay, so what's needed to put together a 501c3? because obviously, if we're going to be raising funds in the future regularly, we don't want to take the financial hits for that going forward, and we want it to be an official organization too, kind of like how the 501st was organized, all that fun stuff. And it's like, so what does it take? It doesn't take a lot, actually. I remember doing several days worth of research to get it to the point where we could, submit an application, get a business started in the local state, licensing, all that fun stuff, and then submit to the IRS for nonprofit status. And it went a lot more smoothly than I would have expected. And it wasn't as pricey as I thought it should have been. But hey, you're going for a nonprofit, and that means it's pretty easy for just about anybody to start one. And we got that together. It officially was founded in June of 2016. That's what reminded me that the Billboard's 2015. Twin Suns started in 2016.
Yeah.
And we started just doing book fundraisers at that point. And eventually came around to 2017, where Celebration Orlando was, and we knew we wanted to be there as a fan group. Just try to get our name out there, meet more people, kind of improve our position in the greater fandom, and help our efforts out going forward, that kind of thing. And so we put that fan application in, that's history now.
Yeah, and I'll look at, and you guys accomplished a lot of good things so far. And he said, you turned that into a positive, and that's exactly what you did. But it took all you guys, all you volunteers.
It did. It was certainly not, as much as they like to say it was all me, nothing would have happened without me. Well, the same's true reverse to everybody else. None of this would have happened without everybody else happening.
Right. I've heard some of the things, Dylan's mentioned and such that, you're the man behind the man, like I mentioned earlier, and it's like, I wanted to talk to you. You got a cool story. You have a story to tell,
Yeah. Every fan does, though. So I think you've got a good idea with going through and interviewing a lot of fans, because there are a lot of stories, probably far more exciting than mine out there, far more even important than mine, that you'll be happy to share with the rest of the world too. So, I hope you find all of those fans out there.
Yeah.
And,
well, it's just trying to spread the word too, like you said, the expanded universe. I'm a fan of both. I like some of the Disney stuff I don't like. I'm reading the books currently through the timeline, and I'm loving it. These stories feel like they're real, right? So then now I'm questioning, it's like, why didn't they use all this material that they have already, And
they've kind of been using bits and pieces of it. It's not the same. It's obviously, I feel like, take for example, I believe they took Thrawn out, right? They put Thrawn into the new canon stuff.
Yeah, he's in Rebels, and now,
right. And he's mostly, from what I understand, true to how he was in the expanded universe, but he's still not quite the same. He's just different enough that if you're a fan of and followed it as long as we have, we just feel like something's wrong, something's off.
Yeah.
And it, at least that's my point of view on it. And it's just not quite the same as what it would have been if they would have actually taken the actual material and just said, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. And I kind of have this weird, I'm going to get off track here a little bit, but I grew up, my father was always into racing, NASCAR fan, loves it. So I became a NASCAR fan, racing, right? Well, he was a Dale Earnhardt fan. I was a Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan. So it's when Dale Jr. retired, and they started coming out with the car tomorrow and all these new things, maybe some of you folks don't know what I'm talking about, but it just changed. So I stopped watching racing. And, he's like, why don't you come over and watch a race? It's like, it just doesn't feel the same to me anymore. It's different.
Right.
And so I get
in a way, it reminds you almost of what could have been too.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because that's why I feel like I if I were to watch any of the new stuff, I feel like I wouldn't be giving it a fair shot, because it would always remind me of the Star Wars I knew, and I'd be inevitably comparing it to that, and it's just not fair.
Well, to be honest, these books are they feel like the story. You feel the character. Like you love iJedi.
That's
like you're gonna. How many times have you read that?
I try to read it once a year,
but
I miss a year every now and then. And it's really odd, because I'm not a big person when it comes to like first person, and that's one of the few books that's first person in the expanded universe. But for whatever reason, that one really feels good to me. I think it's because it did what I kind of wished more of the books would end up doing in the future, and that's it wove another story into a pre-existing story. So it took the Jedi Academy trilogy and said, all right, I'm going to put another story into that and give the rest of that story more context. Almost makes it feel even more believable, more real. So you're seeing other points of view of something that was written in the original.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Right. And
So-
all these books that you donate, the Expanding Universe of Legends that, you get in from the organization, it really kind of bums me out and bothers me that they don't remake, like they're coming out with the Essential Legends collection, right? But why don't we make the Jedi Apprentice series? Let's bring that back.
That's one of the biggest problems we've run into as an organization, because we cater mostly to children donations, right?
Right.
But the problem is most of the books that we donate are intended for older kids or teens or adults. And they don't really have many re-released books or released books when it comes to the younger ages, you're 6 on up, that kind of thing. And it really limits what we're able to do as far as the variety of books that we can provide. And it's still okay because we're able to provide something, and that still gets them that hook into it. And then in the future, when they are actually capable of reading at higher levels, they can still find the rest of this stuff. But you're right, the Young Jedi Knights, Junior Jedi Knights, all that fun stuff has never been reprinted, and it really needs to be.
Yeah, from what I hear, it's great. It's great material, and it's hard to get your hands on it. And I think the Essential Legends things is good because it's you see it at the stores.
Mhm.
You go to Target or wherever, and you see this book, and it's kind of stands out, right?
Right.
They're still getting that word out there, and then it opens up the door.
Yep.
Especially to someone like me, even an older fan, we'll say.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's good they're releasing something. Sounds like they've stopped doing the audiobook unabridged, unfortunately, because that was the big thing that I was looking forward to with it. Because obviously, I have all the books they've been releasing as the Essential Legends collection, and I've caught a few of them again, but not all of them. But I was really looking forward to when they were releasing the audiobooks, because a lot of those they haven't had unabridged versions released before now. So it was amazing to be getting those, and I'm hoping they continue doing that again in the future.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I have a hard time with audiobooks. You know what I'm saying? I don't have my mind.
They're the one thing about the Star Wars audiobooks that I've listened to so far is they're more audio dramas than they are audio books, because they play them out with like sound effects. They sometimes have different actors playing the voices. They'll do also, it basically is just a soundtrack for a movie almost, because they will do the music. They'll do all that fun stuff too.
Yeah, that's what I hear. They're really good, but
they're good, and they have high production, values, and not every one of them is voiced by multiple people, but it still doesn't take away from it. My profession, I end up in the car a decent amount of time, so it's good to have that listening in the background. And it's kind of disappointing we haven't had more of them yet, but we'll see. That doesn't mean it won't happen eventually.
I actually have Vector Prime on audio cassette.
Yeah, cassette.
Yeah.
I have the version I bought actually had the CD in the back pocket, so I have I have audio CD. Yeah.
I'll trade you.
I'll keep mine, thanks.
Worth a shot. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah. I'm just really thankful and appreciative for what you guys do. I think it's so cool. I still can't. I just can't stop smiling. And me saying that, you used to be teamed up with Amazon Smile too.
Yeah, it's unfortunate Amazon Smile is no longer around. To keep the organization afloat, it's not that expensive, but the donations we were getting from Amazon Smile is probably in the neighborhood of $100, $150 or so a year. And it was enough to pay most of the ongoing fees. Some of the stuff still has to be covered, like website upkeep's definitely our biggest expense.
Yeah.
Keeping the domain, all that fun stuff, update and running security, all that fun stuff. That's a couple $100 too. And we try to build that into the funds that we raised for any of our fundraisers. We try to make almost all of it go to books, because that's our intent, is to get as many books as possible. But we had to take that back a step on this most recent fundraiser, because we don't have Smile anymore. We had to anticipate, hey, either this is coming out of our pockets or we got to raise the funds some other way.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And in addition to that is we used to do all of our book purchases through Amazon Smile. So we would make the money go a little bit further by taking the money they're sending us and buying stuff on that platform and making it stretch just a little further. And it was, it probably resulted in another 5-10 books every year, maybe.
Yeah, but it's something, right? It was a good thing that was happening here. It's
unfortunate
that had to go away.
Right. And we try to make everybody's money go as far as it possibly can, because this is money people are donating. They believe in the efforts that we're putting forward. And, I'm not gonna be part of something that doesn't do everything they can to make that money work as much as possible
Well,
towards that goal.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's, and I've always donated to every one of our fundraisers, of course. There are limits on what board members can actually donate legally as for a 501c3, but we all of us donate.
Yeah.
It's not something where we don't have our own skin in the game, because we just don't believe in that. We have to be part of the effort if we're going to lead the effort.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to have you on here, because you're a motivated, driven person, and you're dedicated and you got a good heart. And yeah, people need to, I mean, I knew you guys take care of it too. There comes a point where you guys gotta to help, and I want to get you guys out there as much as I can. Little old me, I want to talk,
Nice. I appreciate it. Your
yeah,
your
it's,
channel's going pretty good though. Like I
uh,
said, if you keep doing what you're doing, I'm pretty sure you're going to have all sorts of amazing stories that everybody's going to come back to.
yeah, I mean, it's good just to take a break and hear something, I
Mhm.
was, and it's fun and I enjoy it and I get to meet great people like yourself. I mean,
See,
here,
like I said, as I drive around, I had you in the background while I was driving around the last couple of weeks, just listening to your interviews. And it's,
yeah,
it's always fun because I got to hear what everybody else was in their approaches to Star Wars. And
yeah, it's
it's
fun.
always been interesting to me.
Yeah. Do you have any pictures available for the new the Twin Suns billboard?
The newest ones.
Yeah.
I can dig it up. Give me a
Yeah,
minute and I will
sure.
find them. I have them buried somewhere on this computer.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, if no big deal, I can try to figure out how to throw it in there. I'm not too computer savvy when it comes to editing skills,
no, you're good. Don't worry about it.
but I could figure it out. So do you, while you're looking, do you prefer like hardback or soft cover when you
I
read?
actually don't have much of a preference between the two of them.
No?
Believe it or not, hardcover is nice. They tend to take up more bookshelf space, and that's kind of a premium in my current setup, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do have a few hardcovers. Like I showed you the
I
iJedi
get it.
copy. Obviously, it's my favorite book, so I'm going to have that one in hardcover. But
Yeah.
other ones I have in hardcover are primarily books I got as they were releasing because they were released that way. And it's mostly like stuff like the New Jedi Order, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Your
It's
favorites.
exactly. I'm looking
Um,
to see here. I'm in our file now.
so you
I
would
have
say,
I have memes that are hilarious.
uh,
Internal memes are always funny
oh
because
yeah.
if you don't know it, two of our people run the Star Wars Legends memes page on Facebook, and they're hilarious. They have
Mm,
like two jokes that they just reinvent like multiple times,
that's
and
good to
it's
know.
they have
That's
a good
good to
time
know.
doing it. But
Yeah.
that means we also get memes internally, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
I can imagine. I
Let's
can
see.
imagine.
I have so many photos related to everything. It's just I got to find the right one. Sorry about this.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I should have had something up myself, but like I said, eh,
I mean, we
I'm
did
not
end up
Mr.
doing those two of them though, and we
Yeah.
we had to do two of them. Let's
But
see.
anyway, so would you say Stackpole is your favorite author?
Currently, yes, I
Yeah.
would say that's true.
Okay.
I would definitely
So
say that's true.
it's
Um,
changed. It's changed though.
I used to not really have much of a favorite, obviously.
Okay.
But Stackpole's always been probably my favorite, from the standpoint that I do love how he writes. Most of his characters, they're multifaceted. They're not, single note like you see a lot in
Linear.
on things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also, obviously, his space battle scenes are
Yeah. He's
always described
great at that.
so excellently,
I
and
love it.
I think he has some sort of experience when it comes to the video game side of things too. When it came to creating things, because the way
Really.
he writes it, it almost feels like I'm playing that old Star Wars TIE Fighter game or
Well,
something.
did you know he was a pilot?
I did not know he was a pilot, but that would
Yeah.
make sense.
No, I don't know if he is or not. I'm just making that up.
I
Just
do know I do I do know he's interviewed quite a few pilots to get
that feel.
that
I was
kind of
gonna say,
feel.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been up in a smaller plane before, and it's different than your commercial flights. It's crazy.
Right?
You,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, no, I just was wondering if you had, because Dylan sent me some bookmarkers. I asked because I like collecting certain things. I have a hard time traveling distances, but I just wanted to have that as a piece of history and collection.
Right. Yeah. So you got those.
Yep.
Um, I think we've had 2 different versions of that come out, one for each of the celebrations. It's hard to find ways to keep the same thing
Right.
in place, but we had some left over. We had to get new material. It was just kind of the way it went.
And what's really cool is, your fundraisers and such. You were just on Matt Wilkins' channel, and he was doing his thing, getting you out there, and you guys bought the books live. That's
Yeah.
cool.
We tried to do
you have a
stuff like
list.
that.
Yeah.
We have a list we pull from, and of course Dylan's the one that put this whole thing together. Let's see, I think I found the images. Give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah, so let me make sure I'm actually putting the right ones together.
Yeah.
Because I had multiple designs before they actually went out there too. So like almost like prototypes, and I just want to make sure I'm showing the right ones here.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we we did a lot of work behind the scenes. Let me get this.
Sure. Yeah, I prefer the Essential Legend size books when it comes to reading lately. Like that trade paperback, I like that feel.
The size is nice,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I believe they used to make hardcovers like that size. I believe Jeremy was telling me about them from Stupid
I think they
Chainsaw
probably
Productions.
did. They were the and this is all stuff that I didn't know. Like I said, these guys know far more than
Oh,
I
I
ever
know.
did.
It's crazy.
But there was apparently a book club that released them in a special size hardcover. And it wasn't always right away, but they would is this the right one? Yeah, that one's one of them. Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
those are the 2 of them. So yeah, they released those. I think they were very similarly sized. I still haven't seen one of those book club ones in person yet.
Yeah. Neither have I.
Right. But here's one of the 2 that we put out there. This was not the very first, obviously, rendition. We actually did these. We fundraised for these in 2019, tail end of 2019, and we had scheduled to put them up basically as an anniversary almost in 2020. And they did go up in 2020, but that was like weeks after the COVID thing had just started. So timing wasn't ideal.
Yeah. It's like nobody's going to see it now.
So you had this one, obviously, the Dear Lucasfilm. We'd like to ask again because we were referencing the first billboard, very similar location. Wasn't the same exact billboard. That was actually slightly closer this time, which was something we all got a kick out of. We were able to find something closer. Please continue the legend story, 2 timelines, because we wanted to emphasize that we were not trying to get rid of the new timeline, the old alongside the new, and because more adventures are great for everyone. Thank you. And that was our way to try and beat the negative press that we had from the first one, because there was a lot of misunderstanding around the first one. People just assumed we were trying to get rid of the new stuff.
Being negative, right? Yeah.
And that's not what we were doing. So, and then here's the second one. Now, the first one did go down, I believe, after about a month and a half. We paid for a month of time. It went down about a month and a half later. The second one, though, and I don't know how this one stayed up, but it stayed up for about 6 months, apparently, because just nobody else was buying advertisements in the San Francisco area in the middle of COVID. But dear Lucasfilm, we couldn't buy new Legend stories, so we bought these billboards instead. We had to be a little bit funny.
Yes, absolutely.
We had to. There were a lot of recommendations made for different language we could use, and this was probably the most amusing of all of them. It got most of the votes, so
it's
we
great
went with this one and the other.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, look at it. It's just
so
it stands.
That's
out.
the one that was up forever, and then there was this one, I believe. Yeah, this is the other one that was up. So we had to be careful how we crop these things too, because apparently one of these billboards was put up not too far away from like a local bar, and of course they had a big Corona sign in there.
Oh, really?
So we're in the middle of the beginning of the coronavirus, and we're like, we're gonna have to crop that a little bit.
Well, there goes the Legends continuity right there. We'll put that in the timeline.
So no, it was good. It was again, long design process. I actually went pretty ham because I had a little bit of free time leading up to this fundraiser. On just like hyping up every one of our donors on the Facebook page. I put together like custom images. I cropped out like scenes from the Death Star trench run and taking off of Yavin, put in like Twin Suns logos in places.
Really?
Said, oh, this is going to be a big announcement. And then they ended up flying towards these billboards in the middle of space. We're like, hey, we're doing another one. Let's go.
It's good. It's good. It
was fun.
out there. Yeah.
It was fun. Cool. And they they funded in decent amount of time too. That was also on a Matt Wilkins stream. We had about half the funds raised, and we somehow raised during his stream. I think it was like $3,000.
That's
It was
great.
ridiculous.
Yeah, he's very influential when it comes to he's great. He's a good down to earth person, good guy.
Yep, and I think the billboard originally was Matt's idea. Like the first concept, it was either his idea or he's one of the ones that was responsible for getting it spread out a lot. He's not himself on social media, but he knows a lot of people that are. And so they're the ones that were talking about it. And I think it's probably his fault this billboard ever happened in the first place.
You gotta do something, and it was a great, easy way to do it and fun.
Yeah,
and
that was good. Good time.
So.
Yeah, no, it was good. They went up. They got a little bit of press coverage. We didn't get any real negativity this time, which tells me that the message actually was received the proper way this time. So that was good.
Yeah.
And we've since talked about doing similar things again in the future. We're not sure if we want to do another billboard or not. We kind of feel like doing the same thing over and over is kind of a bit boring. I can't remember. Did you guys have this discussion with Dylan on things we've looked at doing potentially?
I can't really remember because it's been a while, and I've talked to quite a few different folks already.
I would say, there's been a few interviews.
I know Celebration is on the table, but obviously that's
when. Yes, we always want to try to be involved with getting out in front of people. So Celebration is kind of a must do. There's actually a Legends convention that's happening later this year that we're not officially going to be a part of, but I'm pretty sure a few of us want to show up anyway. And I think that's happening in September.
That's good.
So that'll be fun. I think they're calling it like Legends Con or something like that in Burbank. So look that up if you don't know about it. That's an interesting thing that I've been kind of following and seeing how it does.
Yeah.
But as far as Twin Suns goes, obviously you want to keep doing our book fundraisers. But other things similar vein to the book, the billboards that we've done is we've looked into doing anything from advertising in, Star Wars magazine, which was ironically far more expensive than doing a billboard. We were like, really? How is that more expensive than a billboard? But apparently it is. And then we've also looked at actually advertising in places like Disney, like on Disney Channel, that kind of thing. And that was actually comparably priced to the billboards for like a month's worth of advertisements. We're like, how is that possible?
Yeah, that's crazy. I think the magazine's the most expensive,
Right. The only thing that kept us really from going forward with that idea is we didn't have anybody who would be able to, I guess, act it out properly. And then we'd have to come up with various advertisement spot, skits more or less, because they were like 30 seconds to 1 minute long things.
Yeah.
So tricky, but we've tried different ideas. We're still looking at other ideas. And the one thing we all love saying is that we hope other people out there are doing something similar, looking for ideas to try and spread the word that, we're aware that we're not the only fans out there that want to see more Legends content, more expanded universe content.
Yeah.
And we're certainly not the only ones that are capable of getting things like billboards up. It's as much work as it might sound like. If you have the right knowledge or the right people, it's not that hard. It really isn't.
Teamwork.
Yep.
Teamwork makes the dream work. So
that's right.
That's right. No, that's great. And you should. And I want to help promote and do what I can. And I think I know they're giving us some stuff with even the comics with like the Epic collections and such.
Right.
So, I mean, they're
108 was huge.
They're getting the name out there in a sense, but they don't promote it as much as all their other.
Right. And I kind of understand that. They have a new canon timeline. They got to focus on building that up a bit. But they've got the movies already out. They've got a lot of material around it. It'd be nice if they put just a little bit of attention towards the old stuff again. And I'm not saying all of it, not even half of it, just a little bit.
No, I agree. As I'm on this journey, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
They should. And so what can folks do? Like, say I kind of deal with a local library here. They have like a Star Wars Reads Day. They're doing something for May the 4th. He's a big Star Wars fan. So like, let's say I cook hot dogs there dressed up as a Jedi and charge $1 or just ask for donations. Can I just give that to you guys? Is that a problem?
Yeah, I mean, so we're a nonprofit. Any donation that comes to us is tax deductible for whoever donates it. It doesn't have to be books that you're sending to us. Obviously, we collect donations for various purposes. If we're not having an active fundraiser, that money either gets just put towards our operating or it will be put towards the next fundraiser. Usually meaning that we lower our goal for the next fundraiser to be something less than it would normally have been. So yeah, there's different things you could do. Basically, the sky's the limit. As long as you're doing something legal, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah. Where did these books come from? You don't want to know.
We didn't cross any borders with this, did we?
Yeah. Why you got mud on your boots?
That's right.
It was raining.
Wearing a trench coat out there. Is that a?
Okay, well that's great because I'm gonna see
Yeah.
what I can do for real. Because
And like I said, as always, it doesn't have to be through Twin Suns that these things happen either.
No,
Everybody is fully capable of doing their own thing. If you got an idea, start making it happen yourself. Find people that like your idea and work with you to make it happen too. And it becomes so easy to make it just so easy.
Yeah.
So, it's not impossible. Anybody can do it. I was a nobody in a Facebook group and eventually became where I am at now. And I'm only here because I had a bunch of people to help me.
Yeah. And it's great. And I'm glad that we got to hear your whole story, just bits and pieces of it. Obviously. I mean, and it's always interesting to hear how someone got involved with Star Wars.
Right.
Your dad watched the movie with you. Boom. That's all it took.
Everybody's entry is different. It's so true.
And it's impacted your life.
Definitely.
Obviously. I mean, look at where you are. And you said you intertwined it with everything you do.
Right.
It
became a real part of my identity. And I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a great thing to be a part of. It truly is. I'm so blessed to be a part of it now, like the fandom and just
all of us are.
Yeah. It's incredible. And you mentioned Legends Con. That's another great idea. I know that's one that people have tried to do a couple of times in the past, and for whatever reason would sputter out. But this one looks like it might actually happen. And I've kind of blocked out the time, saying, okay, if we get a little closer and this is still a legit thing, I'm gonna go and see if I can go there. I was just gonna say, are you gonna go as the fan, or are you gonna go as the Twin Suns? Well,
fan and maybe unofficial representative, because to be perfectly honest and transparent on this, as an official fan group, I don't know if there are any problems between Lucasfilm and the Legends Con. I doubt it because they've been allowed to get this far. But I don't want to risk, getting us into trouble as Twin Suns Foundation by taking Twin Suns Foundation
I
to
didn't even
this.
think of that.
So we're very careful about what we do. Public image is important for Twin Suns. We spent a lot of time building up a positive image from the negative image that we started with.
Yeah, you turned it around.
And we don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. But at the same time, these are fans, it sounds like legitimate Legends fans. Some of them I've met in person at previous conventions, and they really did a lot of work to make this happen.
Yeah.
So I want to be there to support it. This is the kind of thing I was hoping to see more of.
My hats are off to them. I supported them. I gave them a little bit because they had a bookmarker. They had a good package deal. You get a bookmarker and some stickers if you
Nice.
So it's like, of course, I would love to go. Obviously, I can't travel for my health conditions, but I want to support this because this is a big deal, because nothing like this has ever happened.
Right.
You know?
And it's a big deal. It's just fan put together. It's probably not going to be the biggest convention in the world to start with, but this is kind of how these things start. Like if I recall the story of San Diego Comic-Con properly, it's a very similar thing. It started very similarly.
Yeah. So that's great. I just, and get them out there and do that. And I want to just a piece of that history, just like your bookmark and what you guys do. It's history, it's a piece of the history. And I didn't even think about the Lucasfilm time. I'm sure you got to be very careful.
We're careful
with certain things,
and if we asked, I suspect that they would be okay with it, just because it's gotten as far as it has. I'm sure the Legends Con people are having to be very careful about how they brand things too, because they can't be seen as having made money from the franchise, intellectual property, so to speak. Otherwise, they could get in legal trouble, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing this for nonprofit purposes. So I still have a few questions I'd like to ask them down the road, just kind of what their intention, with the funds are and that kind of stuff. Maybe they created a nonprofit that's going to be doing something entirely different from Twin Suns, which would be awesome.
Yeah. And just helping and promoting and giving back. Yeah. It's a great feeling. You're helping multiple causes, really.
Right.
You think
exactly.
And that's
so awesome. That's why personally I'll definitely go if it does happen. It's just, as Twin Suns, we got to be careful with what we do.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, sir, is there any last words that you want to get out there? I know you're a busy individual, and
No, just if you could, if you're watching this sometime, I'm not sure when this is coming out, but if you're sometime watching this before the end of March, feel free to head over to our website, www.twin-sons.net. On the front page, there should be a little donate bar you can hit to. And every dollar helps us. It doesn't have to be a big donation amount to help us out, or just share it around, because I know not everybody's capable of donating too.
Yeah.
I've certainly been in that position myself before. So, nothing to be embarrassed about. You're still helping us just as much, if not more, if you're sharing it.
Yeah, every buck counts. That's for
right.
sure, and it adds up. And yeah, I was gonna say, twin-sons.net. I'll put that in the description.
Cool.
Got a Facebook page. We'll get that on there.
Cool.
Get out and do what you can, folks. Help this organization out. It's great people. They all volunteer. A lot of effort here. I mean, we heard Mr. Borg's story from childhood to the president, and making things happen and giving back, especially the children in the hospitals. That's a big deal. And if we can help put a smile on their face, let's do it. But get over there, check that out. User-friendly website. Great thing going on. If you like what I'm doing, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. And that's it, folks. Till next time.
All right.
See you soon.